what happens next, Jess? Will we see all this cargo that was diverted to the East Coast ports and the Gulf Coast ports, and to a lesser extent, Mexico and Canada? Does this all go back to that West Coast, though, a lot of this cargo that was diverted? Certainly, I would guess this is all too late for the peak season if we have one.
Yeah, it kind of remains to be seen how much is going to go back to the West Coast. I honestly don't think that all of that volume is going to head back to the West Coast. A lot of shippers have been waiting on the agreement actually being ratified, and that's certainly too late to affect a lot of the volumes for 2023. But even beyond that, I think the uncertainty around the labor negotiations was certainly part of those decisions of that migration of the cargo volumes to the East and Gulf Coast. But it wasn't the only factor that was playing into that. I think it's a lot around the ports and some of the infrastructure concerns there, and even just things like the population patterns and the fact that the majority of U.S. population is in the East. And you looked at a lot of that volume has been shifting even before the pandemic. So it's not a new thing necessarily driven by the contract effects or the uncertainty around that. There's been a migration that's been happening, and some of these things have kind of maybe expedited some of that process. Some of it definitely will come back. There's certain volume that has definitely was moved because of that concern around the labor contract negotiation. But that's not the only aspect. So I think some of it comes back, but some of it doesn't. Some of it just continues to stay. The supply chains that have been built up to support that over the last handful of years, that movement to the East Coast or Gulf Coast and the accompanying distribution centers and the freight networks and just some of the patterns that are in place. It's hard to shake those up again when you don't need to necessarily. So as long as it kind of remains the same or a comparable cost to move things domestically, I think you'll see a little bit more of stasis of where things currently are. But supply chain and retail supply chain is a constantly shifting equation. So you never know, but I don't see all of that volume ultimately returning to the West Coast.